So the economy looks like it's headed into a Trump slump. What we've seen from President Donald Trump so far in the first couple months of his presidency is really erratic policymaking, where he has frozen payments to farmers, to childcare centers, and to other community groups. He has put steep tariffs on the United States' biggest trading partners, which could increase prices for Americans on everything from food to clothing to other household goods. And he's threatening more tariffs and threatening more shutdowns of essential public services that Americans rely on to know the weather, to get the benefits they deserve from Social Security, and stay safe when they're traveling in the air. So most of the economic forecasts right now predict higher inflation and slower growth. So whether that's looking at forecasters like the investment banks, what you've seen the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States say, there's a lot of jitteriness about higher prices, and therefore, less consumer demand, people buying fewer things, businesses making fewer investments, and even though the headline numbers for employment in the United States so far are steady, those are backward-looking numbers that look at unemployment rates, the number of jobs added. I see a worse economy for the future. And if you look at the stock market and expert forecasts, I'm not the only one. We're going to be seeing an era of higher prices. I think the labor market has already been softening. I expect we'll see at some point it will be harder for people to find jobs or to leave a job that they are unhappy with. If you look at the consumer sentiment numbers, a lot of Americans are unhappy with how things are headed. People think that the economy is going to be worse off a year from now, or they will be worse off a year from now. And there was a poll by CNN a couple days ago that showed that 56% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. If you look at the forecasts from some of the big investment banks, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, other forecasters, a lot of them predict that if Trump moves forward with all the policies he's talked about, you could see upward prices in the United States. In other words, these Trump policies could add another 0.5 percentage point to 1 percentage point to inflation. Two of the factors that are making people anticipate higher prices are, one, tariffs on the United States' biggest trading partners, and secondly, he keeps threatening mass deportation of immigrants who are vital to the running of the U.S. economy. The volatility of the economy is absolutely chilling for businesses and for consumers. So when consumers aren't sure, people like you and me aren't sure if they will have a job a year from now, or if they aren't sure how their stocks are going to be faring in the stock market, they will hesitate to make purchases on big ticket items like a home renovation or a car. The same thing is true for businesses. If you are thinking about what inventory you want to stock or upgrading your equipment, you might decide to take a pause until you figure out what is happening with the policy environment. And Trump has created a very volatile environment for policy. The tariffs are on, tariffs are off, and there is an economic policy uncertainty index that a few researchers here in the US have created that looks at the news, that looks at other policy changes that are upcoming, and they've found that policy uncertainty has more than doubled in the last year. So the knock-on effect of households spending less means that businesses earn less revenue. They will hire fewer people, and they will make fewer investments, and so it's a whole chilling environment for the economy. One worrying piece of the latest jobs numbers that the U.S. had for February was that even though the economy as a whole added jobs, we saw a big spike in the number of people who were working part-time, not by choice. So 460,000 people were working part-time because they couldn't find a full-time job, or their business had cut back on their hours. So at the same time that Donald Trump is generating uncertainty about what his administration is going to do, the Republican-led Congress here in the United States has committed to very large cuts to the social safety net. So they're planning to cut $880 billion toward the healthcare program that serves low-income families and individuals. And they're also planning to cut back on food assistance that Americans rely on to put food on the table. The prices that Americans see every week are highly salient to them. So one essential on everybody's grocery list is eggs, and the price for that has been stubbornly high. What's worrying is not only is the price of eggs staying high, and if you can even find the eggs, Donald Trump has cut back public services that are responsible for monitoring the spread of bird flu, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing a shock to the supply of eggs, and making sure that it doesn't spread to humans in a pandemic. Elon Musk, Donald Trump keep claiming there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of fraud in government, but what they're doing is not going through the scalpel, they're going through the hatchet or maybe even a bulldozer. And they are not paying attention to what they're doing, and it's having real harm in American families. And so they are doing things like cutting back on the people who are responsible for making sure that when we get on an airplane, we are safe, to the point where Trump's own transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, has expressed concern about air travel. We just saw a few US airlines downgrade their Q1 forecasts, including Delta, saying that they think that Delta Airlines, which thinks that consumer nervousness about air safety has been dampening demand. There's been a lot that's happened the last few weeks that isn't yet filtering through to those numbers. So Trump has fired or laid off tens of thousands of federal workers. He has allowed Elon Musk to radically cut back on government functions and government services. So not only are you going to see job losses among federal workers, but also places like farms that have government contracts to provide lunch for school kids, or people who help assure public safety. And so we could be seeing those job losses show up in the hard economic data in coming months.